Coming up, the whimsical pottery of Kathleen Wall from New Mexico. We'll meet this living legend and talk clay, art, and how it's being passed on to the next generation. Plus, how are tribes handling vaccine mandates? We'll talk to our new reporter, Chris Aadland, about what he found out. I'm Patty Thalahungva. Join us for those interviews, plus headlines from Indian country today.
The Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Arizona State University is honored to be a supporter of Indian Country Today. ASU offers the only online undergraduate digital media literacy degree, teaching students how to recognize and combat inaccuracies on all platforms. They are using cutting-edge tools and tactics to separate fact from fiction in a digital world overloaded with misinformation. Learn more at cronkite.asu.edu.
This is Indian Country Today.
Esquili, yes, thank you for joining us. I'm Patty Thalahungva. Tribal governments are adopting vaccine mandates as cases of COVID-19 begin to surge. Weeks before President Joe Biden announced the federal mandate for companies with more than 100 employees to be vaccinated, tribes were taking aggressive steps to stop the spread of the more contagious Delta variant. The Blackfeet Nation in Montana restarted its mask mandate, and the Oglala Sioux tribe in South Dakota closed schools in its territory due to an outbreak. At the same time, at least a handful of nations are mandating vaccines for tribal employees. On September 15th, the Red Lake Nation Tribal Council in Minnesota voted unanimously to require vaccines for tribal employees. And the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community in Arizona also has a mandate to have every single tribal employee fully vaccinated by the end of October. Those who won't comply with the mandate will lose their jobs. And we'll have more details on this story later in the show. Indigenous communities on Peru's Lake Titicaca are receiving COVID-19 vaccinations. The country's door-to-door vaccination program is targeting residents in its remote areas. Nurses participating in the government-funded program arrived by boat to the famous floating island of Euros. All month, they have made efforts to vaccinate Indigenous communities around the lake. The coordinating nurse of this outreach program says religious groups are telling the people to not get vaccinated.
Many religions promote not being vaccinated, which is a reason they give to not be vaccinated. In addition to that, we must speak their languages.
Peru has the highest coronavirus mortality rate in the world. According to the country's health ministry, so far more than 199,000 people have died from the virus. Indiana's historic hotel Elkhart is coming back to life, and it's in thanks in part to the Pokagon Band of Potawatomi. The hotel in the town of Elkhart represents the nation's first commercial property, which is being built by its non-gaming investment arm, Mano Mazden. The CEO says because the area is an ancestral home of the Potawatomi, the tribe is proud to be investing in the region. Originally constructed in 1923, the hotel now has 93 full-service guest rooms, meeting space, and a rooftop bar. The ribbon-cutting ceremony will be held at Hotel Elkhart tomorrow. The event is open and free to the public. A new documentary is premiering today on the First Nations Experience Network called Hoopa Valley, One Tribe's Battle Against COVID-19. It highlights the tribe's collaboration with healthcare, government, and a local radio station on how they are keeping their community informed and safe during the pandemic. Joseph Orozco is the lead producer on the documentary and says the success and safety of his tribe is all thanks to the leadership acting fast.
I'm making this decision to do this, and if people don't like it, well, they just let me know. But this is the decision. I think this is a very serious situation that we're in, and I'm taking the stand right now and I'm making directions to the tribal departments to follow. And it worked. So, and we found out that, by golly, it does work.
Currently, Native American communities die from COVID-19 2 times higher than white non-Hispanics, but this tribe has had only 1 death. More than 2,200 Sami artifacts are being returned by the National Museum of Finland. Some of the oldest artifacts come from the late 18th century, and the newest are from the early 20th century. Artifacts range from gloves and knives to bigger items like buildings and boats. The collection has items from all over its territory, including areas where some Sami were relocated. With renovations currently underway, the museum expects to officially open on April 1st of next year. The Bolivian Cholitas climbers is a group of Aymara women who are making some news in the climbing world. The group came together in 2015 and have climbed many of the country's highest peaks. After making their way up Huayna Potosi Mountain near La Paz last week, they played soccer at an altitude of more than 1,900 feet. Before the ascent, the women made an offering to Pachamama, or Mother Earth, and asked for continued blessings. The squad's president spoke about how proud they are to represent Indigenous women.
Thank you very much for your support. All the climbers will always be grateful, and we are always proud of waving our traditional skirts and the Bolivian flag, and the native flag representing all Indigenous Aymara and Quechua women.
In 2019, the group also crowned the tallest summit in Argentina. And those are the headlines for Indian Country Today. I'm Patty Thalahungva. Coming up, Kathleen Wall is honored with the New Mexico Governor's Award for Excellence in the Arts. We'll meet the Jemez Pueblo artist, who is a living treasure.
Plus, more on tribal nations who are mandating vaccines before President Joe Biden did with our new reporter, Chris Aadland. Clay is important for Kathleen Wall, who carries on the traditions of her ancestors in new ways. The Museum of Indian Arts and Culture named her a living treasure. She's a graduate of the Institute of American Indian Arts, and most recently, 4 of her ceramic figures were acquired by the Detroit Art Museum. Congratulations, Kathleen, and welcome.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
I can't help but smile when I see your work. I would love to talk about the recent purchase by the Detroit Art Museum. Can you tell us more about that?
The acquisition really came as a surprise to me, and it came in such a momentous time because of the Living Treasure Award, and I just been awarded Governor's Excellence in the Arts 2020. I'm sorry, my kitty's bothering. Anyways, 2021 Artisan Excellence in the Artist Award from the governors in New Mexico. So it's like rising, and it was just really exciting. And so it came at a time when it was something that I wasn't expecting, and it's such a big acquisition from an amazing museum. I made the pieces for the Institute of American Indian Arts for their scholarship program. They have a gala in August, and they had asked me to be a featured artist and make a piece so they could feature and get everybody excited for the gala and ready to donate and make the night a success, the whole program a success. So I was first honored, of course, to be a part of that. And then, to have such a wonderful auction where the Detroit Art Institute bought them. It was just over the top exciting.
And I understand that these figures were purchased for a pretty big number. Can you tell us more about exactly how much you earned for this scholarship fund?
I believe the pieces went for $30,000. That was my contribution. But the overall contribution, I believe, was $480,000 for the night, for the whole excitement of the night and all the paddle raising and all the other artists that donated. So that evening, I think, so far has been the most successful since this gala has started. So yeah, it's been a really exciting time.
Yourself, and along with a number of very talented artists, are graduates from IAIA. Can you tell us on a personal level what it means to you to be able to give back to students in that way?
Well, it means a lot, of course. You know, I went to the Institute of American Indian Arts right out of high school with the scholarship program. So I don't think I would have been able to do that if I didn't have that available to me. So it started my career. It started my ability to go into higher learning as a Native American artist. I grew up making Pueblo pottery as much of as did my relatives. So I come from a long line of Pueblo potters, and it doesn't only mean my mother and my aunts and my grandmother, but it extends out to all of my distant relatives. We all make storytellers and pottery. And so when somebody goes to college for their education, it just really makes me happy. And it makes me happy that I can contribute to their education through the scholarship program.
You touched upon this a little bit already, but I'd love to talk about your home community of Jemez Pueblo and this long line of potters that you mentioned. Can you tell us more about how your work comes together? What is it inspired from?
Well, it's definitely inspired by my community. You know, I grew up off and on the res. My mother and father were both lived in various places. So I lived in Colorado, Arizona, and Jemez. So with that experience, I always felt like when I'm away, I think it made me feel more connected to Jemez, and it made me feel like this is so important to me, and I just wanted to make sure that I knew how to make pottery. The traditional knowledge that was given to me by my mother and my aunts, I think is so special, and it's so uh, uplifting and important to my life. I just want to make sure that my family and my friends have the same opportunities to learn their traditional knowledge in clay. Um, so I've always tried to embrace people coming over and learning to my studio and just working with me, or if we have this great reciprocity situation here where if we need something, whether it be paints or clays, we all try our hardest to help each other in our community in the things that we need.
Tell us about your clay collection process. I understand that it's something very unique. Can you tell us more about where your clay comes from?
Well, the clay I work with, there's two types of clays here in Jemez. There's one at Gabaqual, which I like to use, and then there's one at the top of the village that a lot of other people like to use. So there's two clay pits that we primarily dig from, and they're here in the Pueblo. And then we dig our pumice, which is a volcanic ash. Oh, that is, it's our temper. We dig that on the northeast of our village. It's in the foothills. So we dig that up and we sift both of those. I like to sift my clay wet, and a lot of people like to grind the clay and sift it dry. It's different techniques that really impress me about Pueblo pottery, because it's kind of across the board. You know, there's all the different Pueblos have their own way of making pottery, and they're making their clay. So it's really interesting. And then we mix both of those together, and then we have our clay body. Everybody kind of prefers to make kind of what they want. And a lot of it tends to be generational. So like, it's kind of like what your grandmother made or what your mother makes is kind of a lot of times what you make as well. And that's always been interesting to me. I learned storytellers because at the time when I was making pottery, my mother made storytellers. So that's what I learned in the beginning. But over time, being introduced to other artists, working with other artists, then going to college, I was able to develop a signature look. I worked a lot and did a great deal of art markets. So I developed a clientele, and it ended up being a very fruitful career. And I really do hope that for other Pueblo artists, I really hope that we all kind of embrace other people's talents and learn from them. I hope that we all get to take a few classes, whether it be at the Institute of American Indian Arts, because it's local. It's very easy for our type of community, because our community is extremely active culturally, that we don't have a lot of luxury to leave and go to school elsewhere. So it's really nice that the Institute of American Indian Arts is so close that we can obtain our degrees and still stay home and be active in our community. I hope I answered your question.
You definitely did. Actually, you said something that I'd love to talk more about, and that's the idea of generational knowledge and making sure that you're passing this down to the next generation, given that you learned it from your mother and your relatives. Can you tell us maybe a little bit more about whether this art form is being passed down to the next generation? Is that something that you're seeing?
I feel as though it's not as readily available. I mean, well, I can't say there isn't a lot of pottery, because there is. There's a lot of potters here in Jemez. It's just that the younger generation isn't embracing it as much as the older generation did. And it might be an economical factor. Making pottery is a lot of work. There's a lot of time, energy, physical energy that goes into these pots. And the return always isn't the best, so financially, it's not always the best way to make a living. And then a lot of times a job pays a lot more, and it has a lot more benefit to feed a family, house a whole family, instead of pottery. I myself started very young, so I was able to build a clientele, like I said, and a career before I started my family. So that helped me. But the younger generation, I do see going to work and not wanting to make so much pottery, but I'm hoping to change that over in the next, few years. I'm hoping to have some workshops here in the Pueblo and get younger children excited and interested in Pueblo pottery.
I want to switch gears. We only have a little bit of time left here, but I'd love to talk about the Santa Fe Indian Market and the other markets that were in Santa Fe, of course. How did you do there this year? And, how is it different than past years?
Well, this year I did wonderfully. I've been very consistent with Indian Market. I'm an artist that I do my own marketing and I do my own PR. So I'm always on top of that prior to market. So, and then also I keep up with my clientele coming in. So I did very well. Across the board, as far as I could see, a lot of artists did extremely well. As usual, Indian Market is the biggest Indian market, Native American art marketplace. So people come from all over the world, to come purchase items there, whether it be painting, beadwork, pottery. But, the Southwest is a mecca for Native art, all of them. Our art here has just been phenomenal. So anyways, the other markets I believe did well too. The thing about Indian Market is it's got such a strong history and it's got such a wonderful reputation and following that I don't think it will ever do horribly. And then the side markets have been going on for forever, and there'll always be side markets at the Indian Market. And those are just benefiting more artists to show their work and showcase in different areas. So it's a great situation in Santa Fe during Indian Market. There's this amazing whirlwind of I don't know what, it's almost like a collaboration in the whole city. The whole city has this wonderful contribution, galleries, art markets, food, the hotels all, have this great energy because of the excitement of Indian Market going on. So everybody in Santa Fe benefits from Indian Market. Even the Institute of American Indian Arts, we have our biggest fundraiser that weekend. And so this is a weekend that kind of feeds everybody. And it's a great weekend to support. It's a great weekend to get out to Santa Fe and support our not only local artists, but our traveling. I call it the Great Migration of Native American artists. We get people from everywhere coming to sell work. So it's a great place, not only for tourists, but for Native people to support each other and have a great time.
Kathleen Wall, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
When we come back, he's a new face at ICT. We hear from our new reporter, Chris Aadland. Chris Aadland is a new face to our newscast. He's a shared reporter with ICT and our partners at _ News. He is Ojibwe from the Red Lake and Leech Lake Nations and was previously a tribal affairs reporter for the Montana Free Press and the Casper Star Tribune. He will soon move to Portland, Oregon, where he will cover Native communities in the Pacific Northwest. Today, Chris joins us to tell us about tribes who were ahead of the curve in mandating COVID-19 vaccines. Hi, Chris.
Hey, Leah. Happy to be here and talk a little bit more about my reporting.
Your reporting is about tribal communities essentially wanting to make sure that their citizens are safe. Tell us more about your latest story.
Yeah, so it kind of falls in line with, what we've seen throughout the pandemic of tribal nations being a little bit more aggressive and kind of their public health measures, whether that be mask mandates in states where there aren't otherwise mask mandates or stay-at-home orders, et cetera, closing borders down to non-tribal citizens or having checkpoints on tribal lands. It's just kind of that next step. Which is unfortunately coming amid a surge in COVID cases, not just in Indian country, but nationwide, of course. At least a handful of tribes have come out with these mandates, many of them kind of predating President Biden's mandate earlier this month.
And on a basic level, what do those mandates look like? Is it, employees that work for the tribe? Is it citizens? What does that look like?
Sure. Yeah. For the most part, it's workers, tribal employees, or even those coming onto tribal lands to work or do business. So far, I haven't seen any that are blanket mandates for all tribal citizens at this point. What I've seen are tribal employees, workers, that sort of thing. So.
You mentioned that tribes are seeing a rise in cases. Have they seen a rise in cases for vaccinated versus unvaccinated citizens? Did your reporting look at that?
Yeah, no, just overall, that's the motivation for a lot of these mandates is that they're seeing these surges as well. For example, on the Red Lake Nation, I talked with the tribal chairman and they had instituted a mandate after President Biden's mandate, but still this month, they had seen a huge surge in cases going from, even I just looked recently before this interview, and last Friday they had 60 active cases as opposed to, close to none, or even just, a small handful this summer that they were seeing. Another example is the Northern Arapaho in Wyoming. They also just recently passed a vaccine mandate. And, they said that part of the reason was they had seen their tribal health facility had seen 170 new cases the week before. It's like a 70% increase. And, had been seeing a handful of cases, in the months before new cases of COVID. And, a lot of these new cases are coming from unvaccinated people. As of last Friday on the Red Lake Nation, of the 60 new cases, only 15 people were fully vaccinated.
Now that tribes are mandating vaccines, are they also doing more to mitigate vaccine hesitancy, or what does that look like?
Yeah, to some degree. From what I've seen, there, a lot of tribes are continuing to do, be pretty aggressive with education. programs to really drive home the point that these vaccines are helpful, and that they're not just going to be protecting you, but they're going to be protecting elders, younger generations, and just anybody that's coming onto tribal lands. I have also seen, for example, Red Lake Nation and Northern Arapaho are incentivizing getting vaccinated by offering, payments to those who come in and get a shot.
Chris, I want to switch gears very quickly. We only have a little bit of time left. Can you tell us a little bit about, how you're feeling to be at ICT and what the 3 weeks that you've been with us have been like?
Yeah, I'm still getting going and getting my bearings. I'm going to be moving to a region here this week, actually, and covering, a different part of Indian country that I totally have to familiarize myself with and learn about. But I'm excited to be doing more of that and kind of just continuing to cover Indian country like I've been doing for the last 2 years or so. I can't imagine being on any sort of other beat right now. So I'm just really excited to get to Portland and get settled in and, start doing more reporting and kind of being out and about on my beat.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing your stories, Chris. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, you bet. We'll talk to you soon.
And thank you for watching. For all the latest news and updates, visit us anytime at IndianCountryToday.com. I'm Aaliyah Chavez.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run.
This is Indian Country Today.